to be there soon. It's not allowing him to enter on StreamYard. Um, so we can get started. We're waiting for a guest to jump in, David Faro. In the meantime, Nathan and I were talking yesterday, I think it was. I can't keep track of the days, but you have an update about your career pivot in real time?
Yeah, it's in real time, isn't it? It's kind of funny. So the last time we spoke on this show, I was essentially packed up and done with recruitment. I'd finished a contract. We'd come back from the wedding. Like I'd kicked off diversity and everything was done in terms of recruitment. Then I got a call and I was kind of preparing myself to do a role that required less kind of mental attention, which enabled me to focus heavily on diversity to try and grow the community and everything else that comes with it. And so, but I received a call from or spoke with a chap at the University of Oxford over here in the UK, and they were hiring for a recruitment business partner for 6 months. And so it kind of brought in this interesting like conundrum, I guess, of do you want to go and do a role which is going to require a kind of lot of hours and probably less mind numbing, or do you want to go and invest some time back into recruitment for 6 months and probably work on diversity in the evenings and weekends, which is and so what I decided to do was take the role with the University of Oxford and I've joined their team as a recruitment business partner from last Wednesday. But I just guess it's quite interesting just to observe like the fickle nature of life, right? Because when we came back from the wedding in May, I'd spent June, July, August, the majority of probably August, to be fair, or certainly half of it, looking for the next recruitment contract, being very proactive, doing all the things that the gurus tell you to do to find the next gig, and nothing worked. And it's a bad time. It's a bad market at the moment. And I know there's a lot of recruits out there who are scrambling around for roles as well. It's just a bad time for people in that space. But then the moment I stopped, it kind of came. So I don't it's a very the early observations of the role. Actually, it's a really good one. I've not enjoyed doing recruitment for the best part of 3 years. There's a brilliant the person who I report into there, brilliant lady called Helen, lets you get on and do stuff, and it's actually really quite refreshing as someone on a 6-month contract to go into a business and is enabled and empowered to get on and do some stuff. And I think that's what I've missed a lot of over the last few years, particularly in recruitment. When you're a contractor and a freelancer, you've typically been asked to just come in and fight fires, and it's very reactive to the state of where the business is at. But in this instance, it's not. It's quite a refreshing change, and a week in today, but thoroughly enjoying it.
Nice. I mean, there's something to be said for serendipity, right? And sometimes things just happen. And I mean, I think it's when you least expect it. How did they find you? How did the connection happen?
So it was actually a message through a chap that I'd seen on LinkedIn who was just exiting the business, a guy called Richard, who I reached out to. I'd sent a voice note to, and I was like, "Hey, Richard, look, I've got the opportunity to either drive an Uber and get diversity off the ground, or do a recruitment contract and put my skills to some good use over the next 6 months." And it just so happened that we had a chat that day, and things moved really, really quickly, which is always helpful, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah. I mean, that's awesome, and and I know that you were kind of done with recruitment, but it sounds like this is a totally different. I mean, not totally different, but a different enough to have kind of piqued your interest and make you want to jump back in, at least for a while, versus driving a taxi, right?
Yeah,
that was the alternative.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Probably, I've shared this link with a couple of people in the team, and we haven't had this conversation about me exiting recruitment at all. So it's kind of interesting, kind of putting that element out there as well. And I think it's I think there are the two main factors actually that have caught my attention early on in taking this role, and one of them is actually the people within the team are just really good people. and they're learning quickly and they're developing, and I'm very, very fortunate in that I can share some of the skills that I've learned over the last 12 years in recruitment with them, and you do get that level of it feels good, doesn't it? And when you can help someone on their own kind of development plan and journey. And then you also weigh up, when you go to a role like driving an Uber, for example, I think it's very different. It feels, in my mind, it felt quite low maintenance. It would have been fairly easy to do. It wouldn't have taken that much mental or physical energy, but there are definite downsides. You're working at 2 a.m. throwing people around the town who are very, very drunk. Like, you're in a pretty vulnerable spot. And so I have to weigh up at that point whether actually what was probably better for me at that point. And the reality is it was taking on the recruitment contracts. I'm glad I did, because I've landed in a place with really good, honest people who are working really hard and trying to do the best thing for this particular university. So it's good.
Nice. And I think you had mentioned something I think is key about contract roles, right? Like when you, at least for recruitment and some degree marketing as well, I mean, probably for all contract roles, kind of freelance roles, you're just kind of relegated to the back of the bus, right? You're working with the team, you're doing things, but you're not quite fully involved in a lot of things, a lot of conversations you're not pulled into. And so you kind of learn after the fact and don't really have much input into things, and especially like the direction and strategy. And so yeah, I think that could be one of the most frustrating things. There's a lot of benefits to contracting as far as like flexibility and things like that, right? But yeah, just sometimes you just feel like an outsider the entire time, and that just kind of makes it tough. So I feel like this is kind of unique in that sense.
Yeah, I feel the same, Travis. And I always felt this underlying emotion when I was contracting of the trade-off was you didn't get the perks of having a permanent role, but you did get the perks of the kind of immediate cash injection. You just invoice more money than people that were there permanently, right, as a contractor. But it's quite incredible, like I wouldn't say in many contracts I felt like an outsider, but you definitely got that impression in certain instances. As a contractor, you kind of, there was one instance for me where I worked with a energy company, and I had to get approval to go to their summer party, for example. And I've been there for, I think, 6 months at that point, working side by side with them every day on site. And so that's kind of one instance where you look at it and you just go, well, being a contractor can feel lonely. I think the other thing you have to consider, if you're doing short-term contracts like I was and have been doing for the last kind of 7 years, 3, 6, 9 month contracts, you're constantly in business development mode, and it is exhausting. And so I think when there's a market downturn and getting contracts becomes a lot harder, you're just in a really vulnerable spot. I mean, obviously, unless you've got other revenue streams and you planned it much better than I did, but I made huge mistakes in terms of contracting by just not, I think, taking my foot off the gas when I had a contract and not continuing that business development in the background. But having said that, I'm saying that out loud, but in reality, when you've got a contract, you're working hard, you've got family, you've got kids, you don't have time, you've got hobbies, you want to go to the gym, you want to do stuff. Like, you don't always have time to come home and spend a couple of hours or an hour doing business development as well. So it's tough. And being a contractor or a freelancer is tough. And I think businesses should pay a lot more attention to kind of the emotional impact of doing all that. And yes, they get a bit more of a financial bump, but also it's there's a lot of kind of emotional stress, I think, that comes with it. That's not always taken into account,
Yeah. And I think the business development piece of it, when you're in that position, it's hard. I mean, for me, I think it is for you. I think for a lot of people, because you are selling yourself, which is always challenging. I've found it challenging. I'm running for city council, and it's been one of the most difficult things I've ever done, because I mean, I have my own business. I'm basically a solo consultant. I'm selling myself there as well. And oftentimes I'd think about, and I think part of my career pivot right now also is building a team. I need to build a team. It's got to grow beyond me, right? Because I enjoy the selling, I enjoy the discovery calls, the strategy, building the roadmaps. But when it comes to execution, it's just like, man. So I sell, I, I get a deal. I should be excited. I'm like, I just created more work for myself. So I can't get fully excited. But if I had a team that I trusted, and could go out there and just be doing business development, and I'm really then selling them, not myself,
Yeah.
then it would be easy, right? But like this city council thing, man, like it is all me. I'm selling my values. I'm selling me, and it is hard. And I'm not a politician, and I will never do this again. But it's been an interesting experience. I've got to do some B2C marketing, which is I'm mostly B2B. So I've had fun creating, a lot of the collateral, the signs, the t-shirts, stickers, stuff like that I don't normally do in B2B. But man, I wish I were helping someone else out with their campaign instead of trying to sell myself. And I think when you're in a contract role and it's short term and you have to constantly be in that mode, I mean, it's just really hard to just constantly be selling yourself. And you feel like you have to, because 6 months flies by. We were just talking that my son is just turned 1 today, and that year 12 months flew by. So 3-month contract is basically a blink,
It's gone.
and 6 month is like you finally get you feel like you finally get some momentum, get things rolling, and then it's done, right? So yeah, it can be challenging.
And you're also under pressure when you go into contracts. You want to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to move quickly. You don't get that 90-day plan where you get to mess around for the first 30 days, meeting people and shaking hands. You just don't get that luxury when you go into a contract.
Right.
It's like the first thing. What's your first 90 days look like? Well, I'd like to observe what happens in the first 30. Well, it doesn't. Just third of the contract done if you're in a 3-month gig. So you don't have time to do it. And so I'm intrigued about the that kind of career pivot you've been on in terms of the political stuff, because so obviously we run a podcast with Dadversity. It's called Father Forward, and we interview different dads who have basically tackled life adversity in different ways and come out and of the other side and hopefully seen the level of success. And I was speaking to one dad a couple of weeks ago now. The podcast went out last week, and he was talking about having your ladder up against the right building and spending all of your career climbing this ladder, and then suddenly looking down and realize you're up against the wrong building. The metaphor is actually take a step back before you go into an industry or a job and figure out what the career path looks like, and go and speak to people to go and get some qualitative insights from that industry first before you charge headfirst into a new role or a new company. Just because it sounds exciting, because in most jobs there's definitely downsides that you probably don't see coming. And so I'm intrigued about that, but I guess the counter to that is you do develop skills over time, which means if you are in an industry that you dislike now and you are considering moving, the skills you build will enable you to accelerate much quicker if you do go into a new industry, just because of experience. And the experiences you've had. How did those experiences that you've developed in your career so far help you in the political stuff?
I think the biggest thing, and one of the things, and you and I have talked about the workshops that I've done in the past through Seth Godin's Akimbo, and I did the Alt MBA in January of 2020. And that alone, the fact that we had to ship 13 projects in 4 weeks, changing teams. I think we did change teams like twice a week. So you had to move fast. You had to get a plan in place really quickly and ship it and move on. That taught me I can do a lot more in less time than I ever thought I could. And that has probably prepared me more, especially for this campaign, than probably anything else, because I think contrary to a lot of the other candidates who are running against incumbents, I think they knew for a while. Some have wanted to be politicians forever, and just the climate forced them to do it sooner than they thought they would. For me, I never wanted to be a politician. Never thought I'd do it. I think they were able to research it, understand it more, go to city council meetings, get a feel for it. They knew for a longer time that this is the path they were going down. In May was when we had to file our candidacy. And I could tell they were much more prepared than I was, and kind of knew what was coming right out of the gate. For me, a week before the filing deadline, I decided to consider it. Not that I was in. And when I decided to consider it, I met with a sitting city council member just to say, hey, what's it like? What's the time commitment? What are these, what are the other sitting council members who are up for reelection? What's their story? What's their deal? So I knew who to pick out of the crowd to take down. And then for a week leading up to the filing deadline, I was just like, I don't know if I want to do this, man. Like, I am not a politician. I don't want to be one. But then my wife was like, man, you either got to stop bitching about stuff and do something, or, just got to do something or stop complaining. So I was like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of that point in time here in the US, it's so fractured politically that it's like, it's time to stop complaining. It's time to start doing something. And if no one else is going to do it, I guess it's me. Right. And no one else, was going to do it besides the six, three, there's two, and I mean, there's 7 spots and 6 are up for reelection. The one that's not is the one who I really think should go, unfortunately. But it's so I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and there were only 2 of us, me and the incumbent, which, justified my thought of no one else is going to do this. I need to. If I wouldn't have, and he would have ran unopposed, I would have been sick, just absolutely sick. And so I felt like I had to do it, and I jumped in. And the week of the filing, I think it was the week of the filing, that's when my cousin passed away unexpectedly, and that threw me off. And then I'm trying to, right about that time, I have some advisors who are helping me. And they're like, hey, you got to hit the ground running. It's almost June. School's almost out. People are going to go on vacation. You need to schedule a kickoff event like ASAP to take advantage of people still being in town to get donations, campaign donations, and raise money and meet as many people as you can. I'm like, shit, man. Like, and then my cousin passed away. What's that?
Is it a full-time gig?
No, it's not, but it's starting to take up more time than I would like as we get closer, because I'm getting emails every day from some news organization wanting me to fill out a survey, like a questionnaire. And then today I'm in the process of scheduling an interview with a local TV station, News KHQ, where I have to go to their studio and probably have to dress up more than this. This is my standard, like every day. So I mean, it's funny. I went to my cousin's funeral in May, pulled out my suit, and it was 90 degrees and 100% humidity, plus a lot of tears, and I needed to take my suit in to get dry cleaned. Came back, just realized last week in September that I dropped it off at the dry cleaners and needed to pick it up 3 months later, because I never wear a suit. Like, it's just like, to me, it's like I just put it in my closet again for another year until the Team Jack Gala, which is a nonprofit I work with. I go to their gala every year, and that's when I pull out my suit once a year. And when I went to my cousin's funeral, I still had like things from the gala, from the last gala I went to, stuff in pockets and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I've got to do that, and I'm not looking forward to that. And yeah, I mean, and kind of going back to the business development and jumping into something new, like in all the marketing that I've done, in every job that I've ever had, I've never been threatened with violence. And last week I was threatened with violence from some alt-right crazy. So, so yeah, I had to deal with that. So like, so last Tuesday I was checking on an email because I had to confirm something for the next day. I normally don't check email right before bed, but I'm like, this, I need to do this because it's tomorrow. Jumped in, I see this message from this idiot threatening me. And I was laying in bed, and I never do this because I want to shut my brain off, right?
Yeah.
And it just pissed me off. And I was just livid, and I was just furious. And so I go to bed early because I have a lot of early calls. I have 5 a.m. calls with you and clients in the UK. And I had a call the next morning with a client in the UK at 5 a.m. and it's midnight, and I'm just still like on fire. And I'm just like, man, I'm not getting, if I don't take melatonin, I am not getting to sleep tonight. And either way, this call the next day is going to be brutal. So it's either take melatonin and sleep through my alarm, or don't take it, probably stay up until my alarm goes off and jump on the call exhausted. And so at that point, I emailed my client just like, hey, I'm having a tough night. Can we push this to the next day or something? And he was very understanding. But it just like threw me off, and it ended up like messing up my next day. Right. And so that's the one thing that I don't have to deal with in my business development. I'm not going to get threatened if I reach out, if I cold email somebody, right? Like they're not going to say, wait till I see you on the street. I'm not going to get that. I mean, sometimes you would. I mean, I've gotten some pretty shitty responses to some cold outreach as a recruiter and in sales, but never to that level, never death threats or threats of violence. Right.
Isn't it? I mean, we've spoken about this before in terms of, I guess, the broader content marketing conversation for recruiters, but it just feels like there's such a lack of insight in terms of what jobs are and the reality of them, for people to actually make really, really good informed decisions about their next move. Do you get that sense as well?
Yeah. I mean, it is really hard, and it's not like test driving a car, right? I mean, I think that's kind of a benefit of contracting, where it's not long-term. If it just completely sucks, you're not stuck, right? And on your resume, it's a contract. Like nobody's going to ask you any questions, right?
Yeah.
But for a full-time role, man, when you're making a commitment, there's only so much information you can get out of an interview. You just don't know. We don't know what that day-to-day, what the interactions with all the different people, what their personalities really are like when it comes time to working with them, being around them 8+ hours a day. Are they moody, which can make your life miserable if you work with somebody that's moody? My God, I've done that, and it's been awful. And so, yeah, you just really never know. And so it's really challenging. I almost think every job should be contract to hire, like every single one, right? Like make it an easy out for everybody. The employer, the employee, like, hey, 60 days, 90 days, every role should be like that, like easy out, like make sure it works, right? Before you commit on either side. But I think that's what's broken with hiring. I think that because it seems so permanent, I think it prevents employers from taking a little more risk and actually giving someone a chance who may not on paper check all the boxes, but can actually come in and kick ass, right? Like, I think if you reduce that risk a little bit, I think more people like that, especially people like me with a nonlinear career path, would get more opportunities to kind of come in and show how serious you are about learning, how quickly you can pick things up, and just kind of prove yourself in those situations.
Yeah, I guess the only downside is people want peace of mind, don't they? And don't perceive peace of mind.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny when you look at, certain instances where companies have made lots of offers in the last few weeks and suddenly had to rescind them. It is just perceived, isn't it? Depending on what's happening economically. But What's next for you, Travis? When does the politics stuff wrap up?
November, second Tuesday in November.
Okay.
And I can't wait. I'm actually going to be in Anaheim for a conference, another marketing conference, and was kind of reluctant to go. And I'm like, man, it'll be good. I want to get out of here. Just let this election happen. Let me be out of here, be with some friends and hanging out. And so yeah. And we get mail ballots in the middle of October here in Washington State, which is nice because it gives people time to do the research and not feel rushed. And so really the campaign should technically be kind of wrapped up by then, because people will have the ballots in their hands and they can vote, but they usually wait. So yeah, it'll be going down to the wire. And it is picking up in intensity and picking up in just time commitments and things like that. So I'll be glad when it's off my plate.
Well, you might win yet, mate.
I know. I don't want to win. I don't want to lose. It's like a conundrum. I definitely don't want this guy to win that I'm going against. So,
yeah. Well, look, it's a hell of a change, isn't it? And it's probably a bit of an eye-opening experience career-wise, because you probably never expected to be here. Presumably, if we had this conversation 2 years ago, you probably would have thought
you've lost your mind.
You've literally lost your mind. I still think you have by going through it. But
I have.
But it's a great experience, isn't it? And I think this is what this show will shine a light on as we do more episodes and we invite more people in to talk about the changes in their careers and the steps they've made to lead and live a happier life, which is essentially what this comes down to. I've had a crazy, it's not crazy, it's just an idea, for Dadversity to literally strap a GoPro to me and start doing a day in the life of as many careers as possible. So I'm going to start when the contract with the University of Oxford wraps up. I'm probably going to be out in the field a lot more, doing a lot of these days, because I feel like it's important to shine a light on what it's like inside of a business and inside of a job to give people as much information as they can get. And so that probably it's quite nice symmetry to what we're trying to do, I guess, here, isn't it? It's kicking off the locks to careers and insights that people don't usually get. So yeah, I'm excited to get more people on this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one last comment is I think there's always a silver lining, right? There's always something positive that can come out of everything. If it's just learning that you never want to do that again, like me with politics, there's also even something more with this, that through this whole experience, I've met a lot of great people that I would not have met before, like the people who are advising me. I'm getting out in the community more. I moved here. I worked remotely from the first time I moved to Spokane, and I haven't met that many people. And then COVID hit. And so it's actually a forcing function to force me, an introvert, out in and engage with people in the community. And so I've met a ton of people. I feel more connected to my community now than I did. And so if I lose, I'll be pissed, but relieved at the same time. And at the end of the day, I met a lot of great people and learned a lot. So I think there's always a silver lining.
Always is, mate. Proud of you for doing it. It's out of the comfort zone. You've done really well.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
And hopefully we'll be back next week. Do we do this weekly now? Are we doing it every couple of weeks? What's the plan?
Yeah, weekly, unless we run out of stuff to talk about, and then we can push it by.
Well, we need to get people on. People are living on boring stories, so we need to get people on. And that's really the next stage of the winding road. I feel like this should be the Career Pivot show. It should be something that we give practical information to for people who are in that spot in their career, because it's exhausting, isn't it? If you don't like what you're doing, you come home and you got family and stuff, you're mentally exhausted. So if we can share some insights, that would be cool. But it's been a pleasure, mate.
Yeah. Yep. Same here. And David was having some technical issues, so we'll try to get him on next week and test some things out ahead of time. So hopefully we'll have a guest on next Wednesday.
Nice. See you soon.
See ya.
Bye-bye.